Good afternoon, everyone. This is our talk on the resiliency of the African American. I'd like to introduce the panel to you now. We'll start with Ronnie Turner.
Hello, everyone. This is Ronnie Turner, Oakland native. I'm in the real estate development field. I have been a sole owner of my company since 2002. Formerly, I worked for the city of Berkeley for 23 and a half years in planning and community development, and involved in major projects here in Oakland, from West Oakland BART Station to the Coliseum BART Station, where we completed a project in 2019. It also involved in projects in Berkeley as well, with a couple of churches that we're developing housing for. So real excited about being here this afternoon and looking forward to interacting with my fellow brothers.
Thank you. Uncle Vincent, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Vincent Harris. I was born in Texarkana, Arkansas. My family left there and moved to Oakland, California in 1956. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Gloria, for 43 years. And my son, James and Johnathan, are also here today on the panel. I'm retired now, but I was the executive director and director of capital programs for agencies here in the San Francisco Bay Area, responsible for delivering major capital projects for the region. In addition, my career encompasses some 40 years in engineering, design, planning, and construction management. I hold a science degree in civil engineering technology and a master's in public administration with an emphasis on program management. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon.
Thank you. Lance Riley, will you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lance Riley. I have a born and raised in Oakland. Been here my entire life. So I went to school at Oral Roberts University, where I obtained a BS in computer science. I was a computer programmer for about 20 years and got tired of that. And now I am a analytic consultant, and I work for Wells Fargo Bank, where I crunch numbers. I have to do all kind of, I have to look up problems when they're there. And as of recent, because of some reorg, they've given me more responsibilities. So I'm embracing that, not afraid of the challenge, and definitely going to step up for us. I'm a member of Faith Fellowship. That's my church. I love my church. So I was excited when I saw the email to be part of this. So I'm looking forward to having this chat.
Thank you very much. James Harris, will you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm James Harris, Bay Area native, grew up in Union City. My brother John is on the call, my dad, Vince. Left Union City, went to Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, where I studied business with a focus on marketing in a 5-year master's program. From graduating there was in 2007, and the economy was in a bit of a downfall, right? Which really changed where I thought my career trajectory would go. I bounced around a little bit, found myself in Texas, running a small nonprofit where I was focused on finance. And then from there, moved into a role, a world of recruiting, once with a small staffing firm, and then moved eventually into tech. I've worked in the tech space now for about 10 years, moving around from a couple of pretty large companies, from Google to Tesla. Now I'm at Amazon, where I lead a global program for diversity events for Amazon Web Service. I currently live in Dallas with my wife and two young boys. So happy to have this conversation.
Thank you. Johnathan Harris, will you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, no problem. So I am John Harris. I grew up in Union City with James and my dad. Let's see. I went to UC Davis and graduated in 2011 with a bachelor's degree, bachelor's of science in neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, with dreams of going to med school. That ended up not happening. I was an EMT, an emergency medical technician for a while, but I am currently a speech and debate coach here in San Jose, California, for a private school. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Charles Hunt, please introduce yourself.
I'm Charles Hunt, born and raised in Oakland. Known Giovanni for 30 plus 40 years. Went to Cal State Hayward, got my undergraduate degree in business administration. Then to Portland State, got a master's degree in financial analysis. After a 20-year career in supply chain and logistics, and then early talent management and college recruiting. I left the corporate world about 7 years ago to start my own motivational speaking and training business, where I speak on resilience and overcoming trauma and adversity. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, I'm in the midst of picking someone up from the airport, so I'm probably going to be kind of in and out, but I'll do my best to add value where I can.
Thank you very much. Arthur Whitmore, please introduce yourself.
Yes, hello everyone. I missed the beginning of the conversation. I had trouble getting on the system, but I'm glad to be on right now. So, and thanks, Giovanni, for the opportunity. My name is Arthur Whitmore. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, originally. I graduated from Florida A&M, just as James Harris. I think I heard you say that. I was part of the marching band for 4 years. I know James knows what the band is like, what it takes to get through that. Anyway, that was a lot of fun, good experience. In my career, I taught school. I taught art and music in St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown. Taught art and music in the Virgin Islands on the island of St. Croix. After teaching, I worked for American Airlines in numerous positions, starting off as a ticket agent, then as a customer service manager. I supervised flight attendants in Dallas-Fort Worth for a number of years. Was then promoted to general manager for American Airlines in Edmonton, Alberta for 3 years, and Vancouver, British Columbia for another 3 years. After leaving Vancouver, I was the airport operations manager at SFO, San Francisco International Airport. And then I retired from American, started working for the Port of Oakland as airport operations manager, and worked at the Oakland Airport for about 7 years. Now I'm retired. Again, good to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. You see, I chose a vast age spectrum because we each have a story at our different ages. So let's jump right into the first question that I shared. I would like you to speak to some of the pitfalls and valleys, hurdles you may have had to endure, and some of your peaks and wins during your journey. James.
Sure. Well, I feel like I'm at home now. I got a rattler on the call. So, Brother Arthur, it's good to meet you. So I feel like I'm back on the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee. You know, in terms of pitfalls, when I started looking at my career and I started thinking about, things that happened really after college is where I'll kind of focus on. I talked a little bit about in my introduction coming out of school in a time where the economy just wasn't in a good space, right? And so I had gone to Florida A&M. I had really focused on business, focused on marketing, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do in my head, right? And coming out in 2007, finding myself in a position where companies that I wanted to work for, interviews that I already had were all frozen. I found myself in a position where I had to really make something happen, right? I had to figure out exactly what I was going to do because, one, I didn't want to go home, even though eventually that did happen a few years later. And two, I wanted to be, self-sufficient, right? And so the first pitfall I think was, entering into the marketplace within a position or industry that just wasn't aligned with what I had gone to school for. But I think it really speaks to what we're talking about today, right? Being resilient, finding a way, bouncing back, right? Recovering quickly. And so I was able to find a career that helped me to kind of further what I wanted to do. But one of the first setbacks was definitely entering into the workspace in a career that wasn't aligned with what I went to school for. The second one, quite frankly, was just being broke, right? Coming out of school, young African American man. I moved from Tallahassee to San Antonio. I lived on a frat brothers floor for a little while, only to save up enough money to get my own apartment, but not enough money to get my own furniture. So I went from living on his floor to living on my own floor to try to figure out how to make things work, right? And so there was definitely a struggle there. I was spending money kind of recklessly, I think was another pitfall. I think I can talk about that later when we talk about nuggets. But just kind of my beginning of adult life was really just hindered by my current situation, kind of financial situation. And so finding a way how to get past that, right? How to get to the next level and how to figure out what I really wanted to be when I grew up, right? In the midst of really a recession, right? And so trying to figure that out. And then when I looked
Anybody else?
oh, go ahead.
Mhm.
I didn't know if you wanted me to talk about the peaks and
Oh.
peaks and wins, but I can come back. Go ahead.
No. Oh, okay. Anybody want to speak to that, Lance?
Well, since you called me out, I guess I will say something. My experience, like James, I guess I'll focus on after college. Well, I did have an incident in college, actually, where a guy told me that I could not succeed as a developer. And I told him, and see, it was just my character. I told him, I said, you should be careful how you talk to me because you may need me to give you a job someday. So you might want to be nice because I'll remember this conversation. So, but I was determined. I was determined more because I was very fortunate growing up. I had older gentlemen that were pouring into my life. And it's funny, and I tell my wife this story all the time. I was saying how I didn't want to disappoint them. It wasn't about mom and dad. It was about those guys because they always said, I don't worry about you. I know you're going to be all right. And every time I wanted to quit or every time I got mad or wanted to do something just out of that would not be right, I would hear them say to me, I know you're going to be all right. And that was my fuel. And, when you're on the job, walking through the door, I got 2 strikes. I'm an African American and I'm a male. That's 2 strikes. And I have to fight through that, seem like all the time. And, they're trying to do better now because look how it's just taking so long. And unfortunately, now when they do it, now I feel like it's pity to me. So, it's almost a catch-22 on that whole thing. But, and I work in a field where I'm not just a minority. I'm the minority to the minorities because my field is filled with more Indians and Asian people. So, and me, I'm probably the only one you'll find in my group of, people that do what I do. So, but I work hard and, with prayer and support, I get through it. But it can be very difficult at times because sometimes you walk in the office and it takes nothing but strength to not, wrap your hands around someone, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I got it. I want to go to kind of in that same vein, but to one of our seniors. Which senior would like to take that? Uncle Vincent.
Still on the hurdles?
Yeah, or Uncle Arthur, yes.
Yeah, I can talk about that. As an African American, we've all experienced that, and Lance, you mentioned that, and I know we've all been faced with that. One issue is racial biases. People being reluctant to hire us because of our race, our color, maybe the way our hair looks, and so forth. And I had a situation, this goes back into maybe the 70s, where I was hired as an assistant manager with the company. This is before American and all, but anyway, I was hired as an assistant manager. And my first day on the job, there was a young gentleman that was expected to meet with me to show me around, get me acclimated with the area before the office actually opened up. And as we talked, he mentioned that, oh, you must have been hired because of those affirmative action programs. And I said, well, no, that's not the case. Maybe, and in my opinion, I was hired because I've got a college degree. I've worked in numerous industries already. I've proven myself as a reliable employee in person. And my resume says what it needed to say to pique interest in being hired. So he had nothing else he could say at that point. And another point of under racial biases is in my experiences, I've experienced what I call close but no cigar. In other words, I've had many situations where I was interviewed for positions. In some cases, these were for positions in either departments I hadn't worked in before or companies that I hadn't worked in before. But in looking at my resume, there were things in the resume that showed skills, actions, and abilities that would help a hiring manager think, maybe we can give this guy a try, at least listen to him and see what he's all about. And there were a number of times when I would be interviewed, one of two top candidates, but in the end, the other guy got the position, even though in some cases I may have had a better resume or more experience. So I didn't let it throw me off. I persevered, stayed resilient, pray for the God that He knows when the right opportunities was going to come for me, which ultimately happened.
All right. Uncle Vincent, what does being resilient mean to you?
Well, being resilient means that you will face difficult times and how you react to it. Being resilient is, I often say, it's when you get knocked down, but you get up and you keep going. You know, that motivational speaker, Les Brown, he used to say, if I fall, I like to fall on my back because if I can look up, I can get up. I often think about that expression. But I want to go back to the previous point, if I could also, and just mention, you know, growing up in Oakland in the 60s and 70s, I faced, just like these other gentlemen talked about, a myriad of racial biases just because of what you look like. And oftentimes, you know, we face those things as African Americans right off the bat, particularly African American males. We're looked at as if we have, you know, low expectations, that we don't have desire, that we don't have dreams, that we don't want to work hard, and that's not true. In my field, engineering and construction, like the gentleman mentioned, I was oftentimes the only person that looked like me in the office. But I also have to say that during those times in the 60s and 70s in Oakland, I had help in terms of getting into the industry. I was fortunate enough to be in an apprenticeship program with a major engineering company located in Oakland that gave me my start in construction. And even before I went to a 4-year institution, and once I went every year I work in this engineering office in the summer. But even within the office, I had to continue to overcome those biases because, like that one gentleman mentioned regarding affirmative action, folks wanted to imply that maybe you were only there because you were in an affirmative action program or whatever, as if to say that you would work any less than they would or wouldn't work as intelligent as they were alike. So those were certainly some of the low points in terms of trying to maintain, but overcome, you know, with God's authority. I always knew He had a master plan for me and hopefully my family.
Right, right. Amen. Thank you for sharing. Going back to what does resilience mean to us as individuals? What are some of our peaks and wins? What are the nuggets that have helped that have brought us through? Ronnie, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Johnathan.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I am happily married to Victoria Williams Turner. So I'm going to make sure I get that on the recording. So I don't want
Yes.
to mess that up. And got loving grandchildren and daughters. And a son who's blessing me from up above. But to a lot of the points that's already been mentioned, of course, being over 6 feet and being black and big, and like Vincent talked about, walking in any rooms in my profession, normally I'm the only one that looks like me, even to this day. And especially here in the Bay Area, where the South and the Midwest, where you have Chicago, you have places like Atlanta, you have places like Philadelphia, Chicago, you have some sprinklings of folks that look like me who do what I do in real estate development, especially on the major projects like we work on. Growing up in the industry, I'm a third generation builder developer. My grandfather out of Tuskegee, my father went to Tuskegee, and he was a master builder. I learned from him. I got in the union at 16 years old. And when I started out in the apprenticeship in the unions, because the reason why, because my dad wouldn't give me a check when he was paying everybody else a check. So he said, well, if you want a check, you have to go work for somebody else. So I joined the union. And so from that point, when I started going out on jobs, of course, they didn't respect me, first of all, for age. Secondly, because I was black. And what they didn't understand, I was shooting grades at 8 years old, forming foundations, by the time I was 10. And so when they would take me out on a job and they would tell me to do a layout, I would do a layout the way I was taught by my father. And so because they would put me out there and say, you need to lay this out. Well, they said, well, that's not the way I told you to do it. You said, no, you asked me to lay it out. You didn't tell me how to do it. And so many times they gave me a check and I had to walk off the job, and go back to the union hall and come back out of the union hall and run against that same thing. I was blessed because being from a family of entrepreneurs, I had a lot of confidence. I had a confidence in what I could do. But in terms of just getting out there and taking my education, taking my experience, and stepping out on my own, when I started my own company, I took all that experience and the people I knew growing up here in Oakland to help me to create a company that now are involved in high-rise buildings. So taking that from being resilient, looking at the obstacles that I've gone through personally. But the good thing is that I felt there was always a destiny, that God had put something on me that I tried to run from. I didn't want to sling a hammer for the rest of my life. I didn't want to do construction. I didn't want to be a general contractor. I was blessed to meet a black developer in 1985 while I was working for the city of Berkeley. And that opened up my eyes. It opened up the opportunity to see that there was another path. And so that got me going on that path. And so far, so good. So, but I'm never going to retire. Other folks want to retire. I'm not going to retire. That's just not in my cards. I love what I do. And, getting back to, and I have to go back to the path, because that path was ordained. It wasn't something that I created myself. It was something I had a lot of help on the way, had a lot of good mentors. I still talk about them to this day. I had a football coach that told me I need to change my horizon, so that got me into Chico State. Played ball there, ran track there, coached at Oakland Tech High School because I wanted to give back to the community. But I went to Oakland High and I was a champion there. I always tell people I didn't lose a football game in Oakland, so that was all good. But that path was charted for me, and as much as I tried to deviate from it, the Lord kept me there. So I'm happy to say that as we've all spoken, we've all had our different ups and downs. But the good thing is about it that we're all here to speak about it today. So appreciate the opportunity to just voice that little bit of history.
Thank you. Jonathan, let's get you in and then we'll go to Charles.
All right, yeah. Resilience to me is, like everyone else is saying, it's never giving up and pushing through those hard times. Even if you started yourself on your own path and then something happens and your ideas don't end up being as solid as you thought they were, or you don't get to go where you wanted to. Like I said, I was a pre-med major, and when I left college, also in the middle of a recession, I was nowhere near able to go to med school, and my whole plan was thrown out the window. It's taken me 9 years now to find what I can actually consider to be a career. After college, I sold Cutco cutlery for a little bit, and then I was an EMT, and then I did medical billing. I've been a nurse's assistant for the past 2 years, and just 6 months ago, I left that job and we came back home to California, actually from Ohio. And for 6 months, I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do. And then very good friends of mine had a position opening up at their school that they thought of me for, and now I've got a great job and a really bright future, and that's me personally. That's what resilience is, right? Just never stopping, finding that new path, finding that new way. As Black men, I think our resilience is seen obviously every day. You can go through stretches of every week. We wake up and there's another tragedy on TV that involves a Black male, and we still have to wake up. We got to go to work. We got to take care of the kids. We got to feed the family, and we do it every day. And that's truly what resilience as a Black male in America is, I think.
Thank you. Charles, let's get you in here on what resilience means to you. And James, I'm gonna come to you when we are going to talk about the wins, the nuggets, and legacy. Okay?
All right.
Charles.
So for me, I define resilience as the capacity to adapt to negative change and to recover from that change as quickly as possible. And it's been a staple throughout my life. Unfortunately, I heard a couple brothers talk about growing up in Oakland in the 60s and 70s. Well, I grew up in Oakland in the 70s and 80s, where unfortunately we had the crack epidemic that wreaked havoc on our city as it did a lot of other cities across the country, especially where there were Black populations at. And unfortunately, I was severely impacted by that. So my mom was an addict for the majority of my life. My father was murdered when I was 10 years old. My grandmother raised me from like age 9 until middle of my senior year of high school. And once I moved from her, I was on my own. So I've been on my own since 17 years old. But despite that, I went on to college, got not just 1 degree, but 2 degrees, had a lengthy corporate career before leaving the corporate career and starting my own venture, and being successful in that as well. And resilience for me ultimately comes down to being able to think better about the adversity that you encounter. How do we position it? What do we tell ourselves about what it is that we experience? And that way we can create more effective solutions because we're better problem solving. We're better identifying what the actual issue is. And that's, again, it's been an absolute critical piece, an essential element of the success that I've been able to have along my path.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Cousin, let's get back to you. James.
Yeah. Man, I'm just humbled to be on the line with some dynamic brothers, and so thank you all for sharing your stories. Giovanni, it's funny I'll just kind of lump everything in here. When I was looking at the questions and I was charting out my answers, I actually struggled. I struggled with what is resiliency to you. I struggled with finding my peaks, and it's not because I didn't know the definition of resilience, right? It's because I just didn't know if I was qualified to speak on the topic. mean, I think about, for me, resilience throughout my life, it's just, I'm just getting by. I'm just doing what has to be done. I'm just, continuing to fight, continuing to move forward. But when I think about the definition of resilience, I think about my dad, right? Who grew up in humble beginnings and fought his way through, went to Carnegie Mellon, graduated from, University of Pittsburgh, made an incredible career for himself. Went to school when he was older, got his MBA with 2 young kids, right? I think about my Aunt Irby, who was, who came from nothing. And somehow, through cleaning houses for a living, was somehow the person that gave loans out to the rest of the family to buy homes, right? Like, she was resilient. I think about my mom, who came from, little to nothing and was passed around as a kid, didn't have a home, to the beautiful woman that she's become and the house that she made for us, right? Like, that to me is what resilience is. It's about, like my dad said, getting knocked down, being on your back 7 times and getting up 8, right? Like, that's what I see as resiliency. And then when I think about Black men, I think that we don't even realize what we've been through, right? Like, we don't even know we're being resilient. Our life is just filled with a struggle that we have to fight every day. And so all we know is, I'm going to make it till tomorrow. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other and I'm going to make it happen, right? And so when I think about my peaks, part of the wins for me is just continuing to make it happen, right? Charting a path on my own, finding a career that works for me, being able to provide for my family, being able to build a home for them here in Texas. Like, that's a win. But really, it's just about, like, I didn't give up, right? Like, one of my favorite rappers is Nipsey Hussle. And before he passed, one of the things that he said in the interview was, the most innovative, the best thing I ever did was I just didn't give up. I didn't have some type of crazy theory or incredible equation. I just didn't stop. And I think that's what we have to do every day. We just don't stop, right? And so when I think about the things that help to fuel me, is a couple of things that I was taught along the way. My Aunt Irby one day told me, I was coming back from school once, and she asked me, "Hey, when are you going to move back to California?" And I told her, "I'm never coming back. I'm never coming back. It's too expensive. It's too dangerous. People can't make it there. You can't raise a family." I'm Black. I gave her all these reasons that I learned in this, fancy Florida A&M school that was, on the other side of the country, right? She looked at me, and this is a woman that cleaned homes for a living. It's a woman that, had made this life for herself. She looked at me and she said, "We make a way. Every single day we make a way. No matter what it is, no matter what the situation is, we make a way, we make it happen. And you'll have to too. With or without those degrees, you'll have to too." And I always remember that, right? And then the last one that I'll leave you with is, my dad used to tell me, every time I left the house, just remember who you represent, right? And I never really understood what he meant, right? Sometimes it was because I was a little bit off. He was yelling at me like, "Don't make me look like a fool as your dad." But really what he was saying was, your last name is important, right? Your last name is important.
Sorry, son.
Oh, no, Dad, it helped me. Your last name is important. Do what you have to do to ensure that people understand the people you come from, the family you come from. Make sure that they respect who you are.
Yep. Okay, y'all. Big bro Lance, get it in. What are your wins, some nuggets, and your legacy?
So my peak would have to be that I'm not a statistic. I turned 50 last year, and I look at how all the young African-American brothers are out there hustling and trying to get that fast money, and a lot of them are gone. I look at the ones that are gone for no reason, just because how they look. And being here right now, here for my family, I have, my legacy is my 5 kids. I look at them every day. I have 3 boys and 2 girls. And every time I look on the news and I see something, I think of them, because it could have been one of mine, And so my heart goes out to those parents. And it's just a matter of pushing forward. James was saying how his father would tell him when he leaves out the house, don't forget. My mother used to tell me, don't embarrass the family. And I use that now. I still tell her the same thing. When you go out, remember, don't embarrass the family. And I tell my kids, everybody, you don't embarrass the family. Don't give them a reason. We already, it's a negative seem like when we walk through the door. And it's just about being resilient. You gotta, for those of us who play football, it's like your focus is the end zone. That's your goal. And by any means necessary, I'm going to get there. And sometimes you may have to drag some people with you as you go to get them off of you, and they may knock you down, but you got to get back up. What is it? They say you get knocked down 7 times and get up 8. Keep moving. And just remember what's the plan? That's the thing. We get off track. And my mother used to always tell me, we all get off from time to time. You get off. The key is don't stay off. Get back on track. So that would be my nugget. Just stay the course. You may sway, just get back to it. Two of the brothers, he was Brother Johnathan was, he was working. He was on course and he was trying to figure it out, but he never stopped. That was impressive. He was like, I'm doing this. No, this ain't it. No, this ain't it. Finally, he got it. I love it now. That's what he said. And I love it for him because he said he love it. That's my brother now. You guys are all my brothers. We joined at the hip.
Amen.
Now, with that said, don't embarrass the family.
It's amazing to hear that from each person, because that's where we were brought up too. Don't do anything to bring any shame to your family. Do everything possible to make them proud of you, and you're going to be being proud of your family and your parents as well.
That's right. That's right. Well, today, guys, I'm in my father's office. Behind me are his degrees, his picture, and a picture of myself. And one nugget that I got several nuggets from him, but the one nugget that I'd like everybody to hear and to know is he would always say, to this day, know your value and don't let anybody else dictate your value, because people are going to pay you for what you know. Know your value. Who else would like to jump in? Give us some nuggets and what their legacy is. Brother Ryan.
A couple that I want to share. One, I used to say to myself, going into City Hall every day, don't let anybody mess up your great attitude. That would say to me daily. I mean, daily. And then the other one that I use constantly today is that do the best in the day that God has given you. And I take that and take it to heart, to give my best and be of service. That's the bottom line for me every day.
Yeah, for me, if I can. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
If I can jump in.
Yes. Charles.
Who are you calling, Jay?
You.
You. When I think about like some of the, when I think about some of the peaks that I've had, I mean, certainly, graduating college, getting multiple degrees, being able to, start a business, and be successful at it. But like honestly, like I think one of the biggest achievements that I've had was just simply escaping poverty. Like poverty was like so such a shaping force of my childhood. I spent my entire life on welfare. My entire childhood on welfare. Lived in Acorn housing projects. I lived with my grandmother. So money being scarce was kind of a staple of my life. And the thing is, like I don't think we realize how much that scarcity of resources really impacts and shapes the decisions that we make and even the choices that we have. And so, one of the biggest achievements that I've had was simply escaping that and getting to a point where, I was, financially, secure. I'm the furthest from broke that I've ever been. And, with that comes, with that and education, those two combined, it's opened my life up to a bunch of different experiences, a bunch of different options that I previously couldn't even fathom. right? I had zero concept of. So, just that escaping of poverty is probably the biggest peak that I've been able to navigate through.
Thank you. Thank you. Uncle Arthur, let's get you back in here. Then Uncle Vincent and Johnathan.
Okay, what I was going to say about nuggets, and I wrote a couple of things down. First of all, is remaining grounded, understanding myself, also having faith and trust in God, and being prepared. You have to be prepared for all these opportunities when they come your way. We all have to be, and I know that's from each of you that I'm hearing today. We've all been prepared in advance to win that battle. Again, may get knocked down here or there, but we've all demonstrated our resiliency, our confidence in ourselves, and that's a positive thing for our young African American boys and girls to see. So, Giovanni, this is really good what you're putting together, because it helps us, one, to think about our own lives and our own experiences and our legacy that we want to leave for our family, and it opens up the doors for younger people to see, hey, they've done it, we can do it too.
Thank
And we're going
you.
to talk about, I'm probably getting ahead, and talk about our, sorry, my notes, our supporters.
We may not have a chance to get to that. We may, but we're going to jump to Uncle Vincent right now.
I'm sorry, cut out.
We're going to jump to Vincent Harris right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We were talking nuggets. One of the
Yes.
nuggets for me, definitely being grounded in the Christian faith. My family based in that and taught us, and I hopefully taught our sons in the same way. One of the most important nuggets for me in terms of my family, my wife, and our two sons, always kept me focused on doing better, not just for myself, but for them. Wanted them to have an opportunity beyond what my wife and I had. But then I go back and think about my dad, who's a blue collar worker, but he was there for us all our lives. He never left us. He was there. He used to say, education was a key component of doing better. He would say, if you get it in your head, nobody can take it away from you. And I often thought about that in terms of the learning experience. And when I think about maybe a peak in my career, even the fact that I had, if I go up and talk about our two sons, quite frankly, my charting was just trying to stay employed, and in construction in particular, it's particularly civil engineering construction that I was in. And goal was you couldn't, if you wanted to stay employed as a civil engineer, you could stay employed, but you had to move. And oftentimes, my wife and I moved all the way across the country for work, but it worked out. But when I think about that career, probably for me, becoming the executive director of an agency right in Alameda County, where I grew up as an African American male, I would have to say that was probably the peak of my career. Because to be able to work in the county that basically raised me, and to become head of an agency that provided a lot of major capital projects for the region, I was honored to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else you want me to talk about?
Jonathan's turn.
All right. Yeah. Peaks and wins. I would say, like, right now, I'm living my peak right now. Just being able to come back to California with a career that's going to allow me eventually to, start a family, buy a home here in one of the most expensive areas in the country. I'm confident that I'm living in that moment. Sometimes, you have those good times, and you always look back like, man, I wish I knew I was in the good times. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it right now. So that, to me, that's my win. And a nugget, I think I don't have anything else to add. Everyone's got those nuggets. I was gonna say, Giovanni, I was gonna say, know your worth and never settle. Because people are gonna pay you what they want if you don't ask for what you need or what you deserve. So know your worth for sure.
All right. So we're coming almost to the close of the conversation. And I'm thinking about if any one of you can impart one word or one statement to a young man that really needs to hear this, what would that one word or one statement be that you would like to tell him? We'll start with James.
One word or one statement. I would say that success is not permanent, failure is not fatal, but the courage is to come back the next day and continue to fight for what you want. That's what I was saying.
Thank you. Lance.
I would have to say, know who you are, know whose you are, and live in who and whose you are.
Thank you. Ronnie.
Be willing to serve others and be humble.
Charles.
Mine would be you're as resilient as you think you are.
Thank you. Uncle Arthur.
Something I used to tell my students when I taught art and music was becoming is superior to being. And they didn't quite understand what that meant. But the point we wanted to make was an example I would always give in an art class would be, you may start this art class drawing stick figures for your drawings at the beginning of the semester. The middle and the end of the semester, you're drawing actual portraits and they're realistic and so forth. So you've developed into a greater artist than you started off. So becoming, and then other persons may think, well, I've got all the talent in the world, and this was true in some cases. Some of my students were really talented, but over time they didn't grow. They didn't develop different skills because they figured they already had it. So becoming is superior to being.
Thank you. Uncle Vincent.
Oh, wow. Just never give up. Never give up.
Johnathan.
That you are so much better and worth so much more than the world will ever tell you.
Thank you very much. I know that we have just scratched the surface on what we were talking about. We didn't get to all the questions. We're actually at 49 minutes, but the conversation always continues. I cherish each and every one of you. I honor each and every one of you. I love each and every one of you. Thank you very much for being a part of today's conversation, the resiliency of the African American.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you,
Ronnie.
Thank you, Giovanni.
You.
It's been a pleasure.
Good luck, everyone. Best of success to each of you.
It's meeting you all.
Take care, everybody.